Hello everyone, welcome back to MaGMML 3. Time to do more judge commentary. 149, Discharge! By Raider BD. 37.3500, 4.2 F5 difficulty, 15.4 in design, 8.4 in fun, 7.6 creativity, 11.0 aesthetics, 7.4 in functionality. 25% time penalty though. Oh, this stage had all kinds of problems, didn't it? Mick, 44 of 100. Ugh, I know electric stages have a reputation for difficulty, but this one goes too far. You think? Discharge Fat stage has 4 interests. Instant death, tight jumps of death, surprise attacks that can make death, conveyor belts leading to death. The challenges are doable, but they're all high punishment paired with sparse checkpoints, meaning a lot of retries. So means there's also not a lot of variety. So the level blends together. And it's not to say the level is thoughtless, as it definitely tries to do interesting things with what it's got, such as the slight tunnel of dodging elect beams, or having 2 different varieties of electric gabules. But when nearly every section kills you on failure, the majority ceases to be memorable. The only exception is when the level goes for cheap tactics. The Elections are one thing, they needed better telegraphs, or really just telegraphs at all. There's also an invisible spike or two, which I really hope is an accident. Wait. Invisible spikes? Where? Oh my god. But the real issue is the power-up traps. Eee, goodness. The lone one-up net serves no other purpose than to waste your time with a risk. That must be the one-up I skipped. And that Yasichi, sending you back to the beginning of the stage for sliding a pinch too far is cruel and unusual. I remember this! Thank God I managed to not fall for it. Thankfully, there's a shortcut partway through, which I also figure is entirely intentional. Takes to the stage don't have any nasty traps attached. However, it doesn't do enough to alleviate the frustration from everything else. For all that, is the Chargeman an improvement? Somewhat. I love the establishing shot of his boss gate. I'm so glad the level delivered on the boss fight it promised. It's a pity that the boss himself is a mixed bag. The main problem is typical shield issues. Discharge Man spends too much time behind that barrier for how much damage he does. Yeah, I can only beat him using his weakness. When with his speed, the end result is about as frustrating as the main level. Then you discover that every weapon except Thunder Beam and the Buster ignores his shield, rendering him a non-issue. Really? That's interesting. One hand, the Surprise Breather is nice. On the other hand, it really feels like he's just punishing Buster usage, not rewarding intuitive weapon usage. Still, he's better off than his level. Low rebalancing, I think he'll be fine. Shinryu, 34 of 100. Let's get the good out of the way first. The aesthetics here are pretty decent. Nothing visually outstanding or unique, but for the most part everything looks and sounds alright. Oh. Excuse me. Unfortunately, that's where most of my praise for this level ends. The actual design of the stage is very rough. As you get past the first hallway, a lot of the remaining rooms feel too cramped and cluttered for their own good. The tighter sections wouldn't be that bad if not for the fact that nearly every platforming challenge is surrounded by spikes and pits. The frustration factor is very high here, partly due to the lack of checkpoints. More so thanks to the sheer amount of gotcha traps. The Elections are among the worst offenders, since they pop out of thin air and tend to appear while you're in mid-jump. The other one comes in the form of a fake 1-up, which is placed in such a way that you're guaranteed to take a hit if you go for it. The spikes surrounding it would also be a problem if the 2 spikes to the right of it actually had a collision. Oops. That, along with a set of invisible spikes at the end of a hallway later on, is where the functionality took a hit. However, the worst moment of the stage has to be the one involving the Yasichi at the end. Slide through the gap to collect it. You'll end up transitioning to a much earlier screen of the stage. Thankfully, I managed to turn around in time. While you can use the retry button to completely bypass this, it's still no excuse for this part being the way it is. Beyond that bit of frustration, not much else of the stage actually stood out to me in the end, since the level doesn't evolve beyond slightly different variants of dodge, react to this, or get pushed into instant death. Most of it comes across as pretty samey and boring after a while. Should only really point to a few moments that do anything remotely different. Mainly the ones that involve time jumps to hit Sniper Joes between electric surges. The last and probably the most noble part of this level would be the boss. While he has a cool design, he was a fan of the actual fight. High damage output, combined with little to no telegraphs on his moves, makes for a very annoying battle. What also doesn't help is that he seems to keep his shield up for an arbitrary amount of time, making Buster-only duels way more trouble than it's worth. Granted, every other weapon also pierces his shield, except Thunder Beam, but at that point it starts to feel less like it's bloating a boss's weakness, and more like overcompensation for how annoying his shield can be. Honestly, if his telegraphs were more fair, and his shield had more consistent uptime, I could see this being a decently fun fight. Instead, it ends up being almost as frustrating as the rest of the level. Yeah, I just cheesed him and just went on with my day. Patchy, 65500. Danger! Electrifying hazards! First thing foremost, really rude enemy placements here. Those plug guys, especially they're invisible until you get close, they're always placed in spots where you usually get knocked into death. Not great. It gets quite nasty near the end as well, with the telespawns and electric beam traps being in the way. The conveyor belt means one hit and you fall. Yeah. Strange shortcut with a secret that isn't too hard to notice. I guess it does let you skip the nasty final section and straight to the boss. But it's just weird that it's there. You know, I never thought to try that, to see if it was like a shortcut or something. Getting there aren't any collectibles to get in this level. Stage is thankfully short enough with the semi-rough difficulty. Guess it's to be expected as an electric-themed Robot Master stage. Do enjoy the use of Shatterhand music. Never played it. Good choice there. Pretty good mix and match with the MaGMML tile sets there too. I like the dark blue background, paired with a yellow cushion tiling color scheme. Discharge Man himself could do without the whole being shielded for a long time deal. It's a fine boss otherwise, if a little punishing on the damage department. And the ear department. Vivoo, vivoo. Sound effect is gonna be in my nightmares. I really like his sprite work, though. Very stylishly designed. His aesthetics are definitely the highlight of the stage for me. Yeah, it's about one of the best things to come out of it, really. And that's not saying much. Flashman A5, 67 of 100. If you're gonna catch the player off guard, do it in a way that's relatively harmless, e.g. the first fight floor is a Mega Man 2. Or that makes the player suspicious before the trap is sprung, e.g. the first Camo Flametail is a Mega Man 9. I'm on board with the surprise spikes at the bottom of a fall because there's enough time to react. No, there isn't. But especially when checkpoints are so far apart, Elekans need clearly marked spawn points. And Elekman blocks need a more gradual build-up to becoming brutally sneaky. I'll let the other judges rage against the Yusichi trap, which might have worked if the big shortcut back to that room were more convenient. Taking away all the gotcha moments, there's a lot to like. Coherent theming, energizing music, tile sets that look great together, nice use of sky, several interesting challenges that combine tired old elements in fresh new ways. I will not relate to him on this. I appreciate the need to really examine your surroundings to keep track of multiple hazards at once. Although this level caters too much to one particular playstyle. Take it slow, use the buster except in the toughest situations. It's satisfying to play this the right way. It's almost satisfying to fight the boss, all the individual attacks are good, especially like the short hops and small projectiles. But the randomness is sudden and brutal, and the fun fizzles due to excessively long and frequent periods of invincibility. Also managed to get the boss stuck jumping endlessly in the corner, so that was an engaging fight. Wish that would have happened to me. Additional playtesting and polish would do a lot of good. Visually and functionally consistent spikes, unmistakably distinct pits, and vertical transitions. So you see a twisty level like this. A more consistent use of ceiling shadows are a few smaller examples where things could improve. A-Spark, 39 of 100. Meet the first level that had me swearing out loud. Are you shitting me? I said that out loud. Congrats on that achievement. Level itself is your average electricity theme stage with an electricity-themed robot master. The design is, at best, just kind of average. Nothing too impressive, nothing too memorable. A nice piece of music, a few portions where you really have to be paying attention, almost an overabundance of Sniper Joes. But you did manage to be memorable in one way. There are the dirty moves. Enemies spawning literally out of nowhere, check. Spikes there in the floor of the screen below you as you drop, check. A boss who's invincible for most of the battle. Said invincibility is turned off by the RNG gods, check. A boss who also has attacks with absurd damage output, check. A bloody trap that sends you back to the start of the level, check. You even unintentionally stuck in dick moves, but with pits not being indicated as such. Even visible spikes in places. See, any one of these things would be bad, but all of them in the same level? Sheesh. So you annoyed me. That annoyance persisted every time I'd go back to this level. I'd clap my hand to my forehead and go, oh yeah, there's that dickish thing again. This level is a mess. And yes, I even found the skip that goes straight to the boss. Too bad I didn't like the boss, I guess. I'm guessing he means you sliding through that one area that leads to the Yasichi. That's what I'm assuming he means. Really wish I would have thought to try that, that's for sure. But yeah, this stage is a stinker for me, definitely. I hated it. Hated that stage. The Return of Veteran C. 37.4 F100 rating with 3.4 F5 difficulty, 10.6 in design, 6.2 in fun, 4.4 in creativity, 7.4 in aesthetics, 8.8 in functionality. Mick, 42 of 100. Recognize that introductory corridor. From what, I wonder? Fortunately, familiarity does not automatically mean good. On the plus side, this level has some nice aesthetic variety. Yes, it all feels generic, manages to avoid being terribly boring. Likewise, Veteran Z is a halfway interesting fight. Sure, he's just Flashman followed by a Guts Dozer, but that gives him a degree of uniqueness that isn't always present in dev kit reskins. Unfortunately, Veteran Z is behind a long level with a ton of bloat to get through. The core issue is the sheer amount of things in here, creating a strong quantity over quality feel. The rain and the quicksand sections stick out a little more, but that's due to their penchant for cheap shots and/or alarmingly easy deaths, thanks to a lack of proper telegraphing on the recusers or the rocks. Those brown bars are not consistent markers. I also remember that key climb with a double squid on before the boss fight. Hold on. Hold on, there we go. We have a double squid on before the boss fight, because it felt a tad excessive. And there was also a difficulty curve mishap with squid on. Conveyor one felt noticeably harder than the quicksand one. Otherwise, this was long, padded with filler, and overall very generic. Yeah, that part at the end was certainly the hardest part. Ugh. Thank God for Water Shield, am I right? Speaking of excess, though, it's a good 11 different mini-bosses in here, plus a metric ton of spikes. We only have 4 checkpoints in the entire level. That combination means this isn't very fun right from the outset, with fake difficulty that pushes things a bit too far for my taste. Still easier than the other one. I'll grant this isn't horrifically dull, but I can't say it's good either. Shinryu, 32 of 100. Ugh, freaking ears, stop itching. This feels like less of a fully fleshed out level, and more like a segmented showcase of various gimmicks and enemies. Sadly, that ends up making the stage pretty indistinct in the grand scheme of things. There's only a few parts of the stage that actually stood out to me. The ending section with the Guts Lift platforms and crystal generators was one of them. as it's the only part of the level that combines gimmicks, even though the lifts and crystals in the first room weren't really synced up that well. Another thing I noticed, or rather thought was a bit off, was the two Yoku block segments, where you need to reach a ladder in the upper left corner of the room. I had to go back and compare these rooms side by side, just make sure they weren't completely reusing the same layout. Even though they aren't exactly alike, they're still very similar. As for the rest of the level, well, I wouldn't say that's outright bad, it's not exactly interesting either. The main issue here lies in what I mentioned before, that every segment focuses on a different gimmick, while completely ditching the previous ones, with the slight exception of the Yoku blocks. This may sound like a good way to give your stage more variety in theory, but in practice it just makes the level feel cluttered and unfocused. Doesn't help that most of the sections don't really use their gimmicks that well, often having incredibly basic setups and enemy layouts that don't offer much in the way of challenge. There's a few exceptions to this, such as the rain and quicksand sections. Although in the case of the latter, I think that was mostly due to the surprise boulders. More often than not, however, the level design doesn't really do much to pose any sort of threat or offer engagement. As a side note, I feel like the stage missed out on a golden opportunity to play off more of the aspects found in its reference source material. Given how many strange things show up in Mega Man Z, I'd say it's a prime candidate for applying a reimagining to, akin to something like Cyberman Stage, from the previous contest, if it had gone that route. I could see this level turning out great. I don't know what Mega Man Z is. I'd have to look into that to see if it's something I'd be worth playing at some point, since I have played a lot of Mega Man fan games. Patchy, 40 of 100. Strange rival of an unknown origin. Forbidden Tale. Veteran Z. He's from one of those rather obscure fan games, right? Surprising to see this guy being brought into here. For the stage, I'm sorry to say, but it's just a really frustrating experience for me overall. First off, this stage is packed with way too many mini-bosses at once. So much fighting, you're given a very limited arsenal to work with only half of your weapons available. Yeah. But no ammo resupply anywhere until the end. It's like going to war with only a knife. Of the kitchen variant, it ain't gonna end well. Speaking of war, stage even starts with a full-on boss fight, Commando Man. While the concept of starting your stage with a boss is certainly unique, you could have chosen a more friendly boss to start with, like the giant Susie you fight not long after. Oh, way to start the stage with a bang, I suppose? To elaborate a bit more on how the stage was quite exhausting to play, the first section with the real stage begins, where Symphoniku Stage 34 music starts playing. It's especially problematic. Several screens filled with plentiful stalling enemies such as Sniper Joes and Susies, Yoku block puzzles with no rush or any utility weapons to help bypass, before ending with doubled up wind gimmicks with many instant death pits laying around and constant respawning umbrellas, happily knocking you down them to make you redo the whole thing again. I'm honestly surprised it didn't happen to me. And if that's not enough, you still have to fight 2 more mini-bosses before you get yourself a mercy checkpoint. It really could benefit from having extra checkpoint in between, saving the whole frustration of replaying this large portion of the stage over and over. Then comes the part with its poor implementations of gimmicks. There was the aforementioned wind gimmick and respawning enemies, ever so happily pushing you off the edge. The non-telegraphed boulder droppers are also just as annoying as ever to deal with, due to the area of effect, and slight RNG variable to the rock shattering. The guts left and crystal droppers together is a disastrous combo especially. The platform itself is too narrow for Mega Man to dodge the double-layered crystal drops. The two elements also rarely synced up for any jumping window, making the whole section essentially a bunch of waiting time and unfun to traverse. So let's just throw in 2 more of these squid mini-bosses at the end of the section there. And also, make you do the beginning lift crystal jump 1 more freaking time to get to the key door. Watch out for the laser, and pit in that same room or do the whole darn thing again. Oh, trust me, when I was falling, I made sure not to fall for that. Oi. Oh no, you're breaking Patchy! You're breaking her! And then there's also Veteran Z himself, who is absolutely pathetic and uninteresting. Being a literal reskin of the Flashman fight and the Guts Dozer for the second phase, the boss itself is already a recolor of Jinmai Men in the first place. I guess that's the whole joke. Why did the stage start out hard and end up being so easy? Am I playing the whole stage backwards this whole time? It's supposed to be a satire reflecting on the quality of the game, which this gosh diggity darn boss originated from? I'm left with so many questions. Yeah, same. Like, why are so many stages that hard? Like in Tier 3, why? That's my question. Flashman 85, 43 of 100. I'm of the opinion that every level should tell a story. Whether that story is told through gameplay, aesthetics, dialogue, or a combination of elements, there should be a clear thread leading the player from premise to conclusion. This level tells a story, but I have no idea what it is. From the title, I assume this level is a sequel or reference to something. The Contra music, Commando Man fight, the Pole Man tiles start me in a veteran returning from a foreign war mindset. But then the bulk of the level takes place at some facility filled with polar bears, holograms, lasers, crystals, conveyors, helicopters, squid, umbrellas, and quicksand. What even is going on? Each section is somewhat cohesive in terms of challenge and theming. The tile work is commendable, but I can't detect any thread connecting them all. Even the music selection feels disjointed, occasionally grating. The two-part fight with, I'm assuming, Veteran Z offers no insights, though it captures the essence of a decent final battle. What is this level trying to accomplish? There's some noteworthy creativity surrounding conveyors and guts lifts. Most of the level uses familiar setups, but any significant twists, e.g. Big Eyes, Giant Susie, lasers, Yoku blocks show a little promise, Fury is a nice touch. There's so much waiting involved, especially for a hologram to scroll itself off screen before proceeding. Hologram? Eh? I'm not sure what he means by that. Other problems include uneven checkpoint, power-up distribution, how borders and crystals are introduced, seemingly arbitrary weapon limitations, climbing down a ladder to your death during a mini-boss fight, and using Rush Coil to avoid a key door, which potentially circumvents the final challenge if you save your key. Huh. I didn't know you could do that. Would have been nice if I could have done that. I wish I had more positive things to say, because I can't get a handle of the story. I have a hard time enjoying this level. Ace Park, 30 of 100. This is a stage that I had was it Lavana or Lana? Something like that. And as a proxy. I feel like I should recount what happened during the play session. After fighting with the harder Death Kit bosses, in the first room, I'll just assume it's Leanna. Leanna accidentally died to a big guy, and starting from the beginning, I decided to throw down my pen and leave the room. Why is there no checkpoint after the boss? Why is there a second boss before we see the first checkpoint? Why does a stage that lasts around 15 to 20 minutes have 3 stage checkpoints in? What is the obsession with mini-bosses? All questions yet to be answered. This is a level that is trying to be a Wily level, but these are one of the hardest level types to get right. In the base series, these are often the most generic of stages, reusing previously seen level assets willy-nilly. This leaves the level with almost no identity and cohesion, especially when you keep changing between tile sets and gimmicks. The level appears to be structural quite well. The Quickman laser segment was a highlight, but there were a couple of places with tight jumps and low ceilings. There's also been some visual indicators with the dropping boulders and crystals. Having 11 boss fights in the stage is frankly overkill. There were a couple of ideas on the verge of working. But when the sixth boss of the stage is the only one doing something clever, it's quite hard to notice or care. The final encounter with the twin Squidon is just horrendous. There's no reliable way to dodge on a moving platform being bombarded by crystals. Yeah. Yeah, I do not have much to say about the stage, aside from it was easier than the last one, but not by much. I did not like the lack of decent weapons to use. And the checkpoints were annoying. I had to E-tank spam my way through most of it. And some segments were just bullshit until you realize you can use Water Shield to mitigate it. Okay. Moving on. Airman's Ultimate Weapon by Tarkin809. Got 37.8 of 100, 2.8 out of 5 difficulty, 13 in design, 7.6 in fun, 4.2 in creativity, 6.4 in aesthetics, 6.6 in functionality. Give me 1 second, though. Okay, there we go. Moving on. Mick, 18 of 100. Well, one thing's for sure, it's level extremely green, not a whole lot else. A few kind of unique moments, only because I've never seen a passworder lock without the actual cannon, meaning it's absolutely no threat. The level is primarily encounters with generic goons or Airman's regular goons. Fortunately, this is nothing we haven't seen before, even when the level adds on sheep locks, continues to be unremarkable. Probably the only thing I need to remark on is the absurd amount of green, mainly because green spikes and green all the other solids equals readability havoc. Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't fall for that, honestly. Boss, however, is borderline unplayable nonsense. Regular attack spawns, dies immediately, so he's basically just dabbing uselessly. But then every so often he'll freeze time and fire large wind waves that tear off large pieces of your health bar. If you happen to be grounded when he does this, you're pretty much dead. Wait, really? I only saw him do that once, and it didn't seem like he was freezing me. With no warning. The most prominent M-level level is this thoroughly broken? Got nothing else going for it? Let's go back to the drawing board. Shinryu, 20 out of 100. During the process of judging these levels, we were tasked with giving each a personal difficulty score. This one got a 3 out of 5 from me. The one and only reason it even got that high is due to the boss. As far as the stage itself goes, it's pretty short, with not much to talk about, save for a few aspects. The color palette is certainly one, given how overly green the tiles are. They don't look that bad when paired with the sky background, but the indoor segments are a bit hard to look past. That aside, the melody response cannon, minus the cannon part, is probably the most noble section of the stage, but not for the right reasons. 2 of the buttons aligned underneath a low platform, making it impossible to jump over said buttons without hitting them. It's a very tedious segment to an otherwise bland level. As played before, however, the boss is what really pushes it over the edge. Airman has a plethora of problems, with the most obvious being that tornadoes don't spawn correctly. They flash in for a split second, and can actually damage you if you're standing at a spot where they briefly appear, then immediately go away while Airman casually pushes you back. Then there's his airwave attack, which does enough damage to kill you in 4 hits. Thankfully it's relatively easy to avoid, till he puts out a version of it that stops time. So there are 2 different versions of that, apparently. I just got lucky, I guess. There's no telegraph for when he's about to do this. Which means if you get frozen while he's him on the ground, you'll be losing a ton of health, or depending on how much damage you've taken prior, all of it, with no way to retaliate. Thankfully he's incredibly weak to the Spark Chaser, which can also easily trigger a soft lock. If you kill Airman while time is frozen via Spark Chaser, or by just timing your shots right, the time freezing effect doesn't go away, no matter how long you wait. Damn. so even using the weakness is dangerous. All things considered, I think it's pretty safe to say this could have done with a lot more playtesting. Patchy, 57 of 100. Looky, Airy does the funny. He's referring to the dab. Green room, green spy, green ladder. Simon says mini-boss, with no threat of failing other than the annoyance of needing to use special weapons or traverse through the buttons without triggering them. Yeah, definitely had to do that once or twice. No checkpoint after that until right before the boss, because it's supposed to be making fun of Mega Man 1 and 2 level design. Yeah, the stage is short enough, I guess. The Airman fight is silly, I guess. Definitely rude when getting caught by that flash stopper attack the first time around. Being stuck, not being able to deal with the onslaught, is not good boss design. I must have gone really lucky. Also really weird that the tornadoes he summons show up for 1 frame and then despawn immediately. Can't tell if it's intentional behavior. I think it's supposed to be a joke. More or less. Flashman 85, 49 of 100. With 176 levels to judge, tried to balance detail with brevity and limit myself to around 300 words per review. That adds up to more than 52,000 words. Yeesh, that's a fucking essay. Which is longer than The Great Gatsby. Oh god, really? Those are just the words that made the final cut. Can't tell how many times I've revised and completely rewritten these reviews. As long as level's premise, atmosphere, challenges, and polish can be something worth writing about, I don't mind producing another 300-odd words. Here I'm struggling. Level's playable. Meets my expectations for length, general layout, and other fundamental aspects of design. But when competing against 175 other levels, playable is only a starting point. Theming novelty, fairness, purpose, that's what I'm looking for on every screen. Color contrasting spikes of uniform design, two-way ladder transitions. Boss fight with stable programming would be nice too. From the enemies to the music, none of the elements from Airman's level, Mega Man 2, used in a way that feels original. The button puzzle's awkward filler doesn't fit with the rest of the level. There's no risk or danger involved. Low ceiling makes some button sequences impossible, though using special weapons to get around the room. Sheepman blocks are a rough surprise for players who haven't encountered them before. It's a shame they're never combined with any enemies. Metals and Joes are thoroughly exhausting in these stealth configurations. Airman jokes have run their course. At least the tile set is simple and clean. Kingdom Hearts! The boss chamber looks particularly good. Acebark, 37 of 100. This stage doesn't have it easy being green. In fact, it rather hurts the eyes at some points. Okay, I want to, give a +5 to this just by referencing the Muppets. Also, fun fact, when instant death spikes should probably not be the same color as the background to which they're on. Most of the stage is just oh so very basic. Most stock of stock asset enemies, very badly placed mini-boss, and, well, to top the stage off, we have what's the most pointless of pointless Simon Says doors. Said section's absurd to try and navigate. And the fact that checkpoint is before it, rather than after, makes dying to the Artikis way more annoying than it had any right to be. Yeah, I just rush jetted and was done with it. And then, Airman. I mean, his sprite looks good, but it's also not yours. It's straight from Boilman stage in MaGMML 2. Well, he made some changes. Like, he didn't have those attacks, for one thing. And honestly, what the bleeding hell? Either it freezes time, JC throws attacks that knock off a whopping quarter of your health, and he can't even subtly avoid it, because, you know, he's frozen time without a tell he was gonna do, so... Yeah, obviously not a fan of any of this. Aside from it being a bit on the easy side, I would agree it wasn't a thrilling stage, and I did get annoyed at having to do the Simon Says thing. Since, you know, I suck at remembering stuff, due to me being autistic and stuff, and that's a thing I have problems with. But that's a me problem. For most people, the stage is going to be just pretty generic. I hope I lose. A grand tale. By that, one ender. 1.6 F5 difficulty, 36.40 of 100 score, 2.6 in design, 9.2 in fun, 5.2 in creativity, 5.2 in aesthetics, 8.2 in functionality. Mech, 33 of 100. Well, that was silly. It's painfully obvious this isn't a serious attempt, but... there's some fun stuff in here. Let's go we were close to overboard. The many resized enemies were worth a chuckle. Bun bees everywhere! Got the odd chuckle. Music was great for setting the mood. For more serious commentary, the unusual yoku patterns made them more interesting, with the standard stuff. Top of actually having a difficulty curve. And Boo Beam Trap had a fun cameo with an actually genuinely interesting boss room. I'm almost disappointed they all died in one hit. I'm mixed on that. It was nice to know you didn't need Crash Bomber, obviously, to beat it. But it was kind of sad that you couldn't use special weapons on it. You had to use the Buster. And it was kind of hard to reach to hit some of the top ones. Like, I managed, but I think you could have done more with that, personally. In all honesty, there's some competent stuff in here. I'd be surprised if it actually gets last place. I'll be surprised if it even ends up in Tier 1. This has more merit than it first seems. Why did you think it would be in Tier 1? Tier 1 is for the worst of the worst, isn't it? Like, I don't think it's that bad, personally. Shinryu, 17 of 100. Honestly, I've seen a lot worse. Stage isn't good, not by a long shot. It's not quite what I'd call last place material. Really, the only major thing worth mentioning here is the secret room to the right at the start of the stage. Only can you die by clipping through the wall. So many bolts and other collectibles that are around that actually lag the game for me. Other than that, the rest of the stage's issues are all fairly obvious. With the level structure, aesthetics, and general cohesion, just being all over the place. That being said, there are two things for this level I actually liked. One of them was the choice of music. The other was the setup involving the Boo Beam traps. That part had the potential to be really interesting. But it comes and goes so fast that it feels like a wasted opportunity. Agreed. I get that's probably intentional, given the obvious. But at the very least, I think it's something worth exploring if you want to try your hand at a more legitimate level in the future. Patchy, 55 of 100. Wish satisfied, you did win. That's mean. I know it's supposed to be a joke on the title, but... There isn't really much going on in the level design. Straight linear rooms. With some yoku blocks. Funny face, I'm sorry. A lot of patchy stuff just make me chuckle, if not laugh outright. Okay. There really isn't really much going on in the level design, straight linear rooms, and then some yoku blocks making funny faces. Not really much of a grand tale. I like the part with the grabby enemies falling in various sizes. Hilarious, though, doesn't really add to the level design. The other jokes, either I don't get, or they go by so quickly, especially the ending funnies. This is a level design contest, not a magfly? Make a good funny level, yes? Okay, to be fair, I want that to be a thing. I want that to be a thing. Even if it's a small contest, I would love to see that. Can't say I'm impressed with this one. Flashman A5, 50 of 100. I'm so sorry. I was really hoping you'd lose, but you just didn't make your level bad enough. Maybe it's the thoughtful checkpoint placement and recently placed power-ups. Maybe it's the rocking music. Maybe it's the goofy weirdness of the resize and misshapen enemies. Whatever the case, this is hardly the kind of level to lose at a contest like this. Granted, the odd color combinations and mishmashy tile work are a little unappealing and make it hard to tell spikes from the rest of the foreground. Architecture and overall layout sometimes feel haphazard. Aside from a sharp learning curve, there isn't much of a challenge. So many hazards that use this decoration, and Rush can bypass almost all the rest. The final stretch seems like a reference to something I'm unfamiliar with, so the level falls flat. Still, the shortcomings are forgivable enough, aside from deliberately inconsistent collision object use. Screen transitions where you can land aside a wall, the dead-end secret area that lags my computer with its ludicrous generosity, constructions acceptably sound, some creature Yoku block, and mystery tank use in the token challenges. Even if it's underwhelming in execution, a Boo Beam fight relying on gimmicks is a fun idea. At the end of the day, this level is neither ironically good enough nor hilariously bad enough to live up to its name. No effort was made to be obnoxiously grand or insubstantially fluffy. Very nearly hit the brief of making a good MaGMML level, and that's disappointing. Why? That would just made it funnier if he actually got higher. Imagine if he was, like, in the top 10 or something. That would have been awesome. Alas. A Spark, 37 of 100. Okay, so I'll skip things I would normally comment on here. Those issues are obvious. You know they're obvious. I know they're obvious, and we all know this isn't remotely serious. But you know this level isn't bad enough for this title to qualify. Also, nope, this isn't even a Straw's a furry comic. Bad enough. A fair either. Dead blame it. No, there was in fact the occasional sign of competence amidst the random nonsense. Most of the Yoku block setups are actually pretty solid, and playable, which is only noticeable provided the player doesn't actively skip them and any platforming in the stage, which is rather likely to the level's vibe, making it highly likely that the player reaction to the stage will be, I can't be arsed. I should know this occurred right in my first run of the stage. Well, that is, it's solid barring the last token room and its overly long pattern that involves inexplicable spike Yokus. And the rest is just utter nonsense. You know what? It's just hopelessly mediocre rather than bad. And which is worse, a bad level where you get perverse joy at either laughing at it or with it, or a stage that gets no reaction otherwise? You be the judge. So, I like this stage. Like, I like it a lot, actually. It's good. I would say this. It's pretty good, I would say. Like, it's a nonsense level, but it had some pretty nice things going for it. I would have laughed if it made the top 10. Like the title would have made completely no sense at that point, but hey. It did set out to be a nonsense level, and it accomplished what it set out to do. What can I say? It works pretty well. So, yeah, that's cool. Another thing I'm going to say is that it's nice to have a stage that didn't piss me off for a change. Like I said, I don't mind a little challenge, but so many in this tier just feel frustrating for the sake of frustrating. And I know for some, that's kind of part of the challenge in itself, but I just don't have that kind of patience, you know? It'd be one thing if this had, like, the beat that saves you from pits, or spike guards. You know, I'd be more willing to accept it then. But honestly, without it, some of these stages just feel unbearably bad. But, anyways, thank you guys for watching. I will talk to you later. See ya.